welcome. I'm Debbie Barnett. Tonight's live stream is all about the National Mahjong League rules. Now, keep in mind, I am not going to be able to cover all the rules because we would be here for hours and hours. But I chose some that I thought were the most important questions that get asked in my Ask the Mahjong Teacher group most frequently, and some others that I thought were worthy of putting in here. And sometimes they're rather hard to wrap your brain around because it seems like there's some just inconsistencies, and sometimes it's not as simple as it can be. And we hope that the league will continue to improve the way the rules are stated, and they have. We reach out to them, players reach out to them, and do ask them to make changes and updates, and they do a pretty good job at that. However, there are still things that just do not make a whole lot of sense if you're trying to read and decipher them on your own. So hopefully tonight I can help out. And then if you have any others when we're done, any other rules, we can explore those as well. And at the very end, I'm also going to see if my little screencasting works, where I have an app that I put on my phone that will cast my phone to the screen so I can show you how Mahjpedia works if you don't know already about it. If you have Mahjpedia, great. If you know how to use it efficiently, you probably absolutely love the app, because there are just times that we're playing Mahjong with our friends and questions come up. I don't know about you, but there's never a game where something doesn't come up. We think some of these unusual circumstances will never arise, but they do arise. But yeah, so Mahjpedia, which is an app for all the rules, I'm going to show you how easy it is to use. And for those of you who have it already and know how to use it, I'm sure that you just find it so simple. But if you're not familiar with it and you go and type in a full sentence with all crazy words and sometimes words that we don't even use, which happened last week with somebody, it's not going to find anything. So with any kind of searching and database, less is more. Always remember that. You could use one word and you'll find tons of stuff. You use 5 or 6 words and you may not even get a hit. So I'll show you around that after we're done, since it's all about the rules. So one of the beauties of this Mahjpedia is that it's right on your phone. So if you're playing with your friends and somebody says, no, you can't do that, and somebody else says, yes, you can, and you start arguing, and one person's like, I've been playing 20 years, I never heard of such a thing. Well, all you have to do is take your phone out, open it up, do your little search, and just show it to them. Because it not only has the rule, but it has the source where it is in Mahjong Made Easy, or once in a while, it's not in Mahjong Made Easy. It could be from a phone call to the league or a letter to the league, and that also will be noted. If you have questions, write them down so that we could talk about them after. So they're all numbered. So if there's something that you want to revisit, just write down the number of it, maybe make a note or something. And here we go. So this is, let's take a deep dive into the National Mahjong League rules. All right, our very first rule, I want to move this out, is stopping the Charleston. All right, now this is a very, very interesting topic here, because I had my event this last month, and during the tournament there was a player who stopped the Charleston after the first Charleston consistently, and for her it was a strategy. Now I don't quite understand that strategy, but she believes that there's some magic to her stopping the Charleston and giving her an edge over not passing additional tiles in the second left. The rule is that you can stop the Charleston, no questions asked, none. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Now, if you have a table rule where you guys say, look, you got to kind of be honest, and if you have one really strong hand, you could stop it. But honestly, nobody shows their hand. So how in the world would you ever know whether that person really only had one hand? What's the advantage to continuing the Charleston? You get to see potentially 12 more tiles. So I urge everybody to continue the Charleston. But in case you didn't know it, nobody is supposed to say a thing. And I know this is sometimes a pretty sore spot during games. It ended up being a bit of a sore spot at the tournament because the player did not like that someone asked her or challenged her on why she stops it. Nope, we got to zip it up. Matter of fact, we got to zip it up over a lot of things when it comes to playing and keeping the peace with people. Unless, like I said, you have Mahjpedia, and you could just go ahead and look it up and show them that it is definitely a rule. All right, the next thing is multiple players passing blind. And this is another, a lot of these are very often asked in Ask the Mahjong Teacher in my Facebook group. So that's why I picked a lot of these here. So there might be a time during the Charleston where everyone wants to do a blind pass on the first left or last right. And if this occurs, the player with the highest number of tiles begins the process with an IOU. And this is how it works. So let's say player 2 has 2 tiles to pass to the receiving player. That player can now take 1 tile and pass it on to the receiving player, to the next receiving player. This is repeated, the exact same thing, until the very last player passes their 3 tiles to east or to whoever didn't have, the beginning starter, who can now, not the beginning, but the player who had the least amount of tiles, actually. That really should say to the last player, who can now take one of those tiles and repay the IOU to the player to whom the tile was owed. Now, I had to do this myself in person. I had to actually make this happen for me to really see how it works out. But it is very, very simple, and it's in the book. It is a rule, Mahjong Made Easy 2024, page 13. But I do have to fix that because the rule slightly changed where it said east starts, and now it's not east. It's the person who has the most tiles. So I have to fix that. I always have something to fix on these things, even though I try to get them all right. All right, the next rule we're going to talk about is what happens if the wrong player discards as east. So you've already had the roll, you know who east is next, right? But we have those moments as we get up there, just getting a little bit older, and they discard. Well, what happens? So if the wrong player discards as east, they can take back the tile because the game does not officially begin until the correct east discards. But what happens if this is noticed after a player has picked a tile from the wall? So east accidentally discards, the next player picks, then you have to throw the tiles in and start the game over. And again, this is also in Mahjong Made Easy. All right, what happens if the wrong player actually assumes the east position? If the wrong player assumes the east position, they roll the dice and break the wall, the game will continue, and at the start of the second game, the rightful east begins. So this is a little different. This is if the wrong player actually rolls the dice and breaks the wall, and they really weren't east at all. So it's not like they just discarded. They actually rolled, broke the dice, and they weren't supposed to. The player who assumed East incorrectly ends up being skipped during the next round. So they get a little slap on the hand for making that boo-boo. So if they started, then the next game, the rightful East starts. And as you go around, you just skip over the player that actually made that boo-boo. Some of these are pretty interesting too. All right. Hopefully most of you guys know this, but we get asked it all the time. Commitment to a pick from the wall. The only time you do not have to take that pick from the wall is if you simply put your finger on the tile. If you move it even slightly, it's yours. You must take it. So that is the difference with a pick from the wall. You have to, if you just touch it, you're okay. Cool. You can just change your mind. And why would you change your mind? Because you want the previous discard. So that's the difference there. You move it, you lift it, it's yours. And what about a commitment to calling a tile? Now, this is different. If you touch a tile, you lift a tile, once you call it, it's okay to put it back. But once you put that tile on the flat part of your rack, or take tiles out of the slope part of your rack and put them up on the top, that tile is yours. No changing that commitment to the call at that point. What about commitment to discarding a tile? You're committed to discarding a tile once it is fully named or it has touched the table. So if you were to say one, but you didn't say one, bam, you could change your mind. Okay, here's an interesting little thought. There's a lot of people that are being taught to play all different ways today, and sometimes they're not the right way. Sometimes it's okay, it's not going to hurt anybody. But you guys probably have heard some people calling the one bam different things. Well, for me, a fully named one bam is one bam. What happens if somebody says bam bird? That's not written in the book, so we don't really know how the league would vote on that. But I would have to guess that whatever somebody's name is, if it's fully named, then it would be considered a discarded tile. But that's just an interesting one that I was thinking about today. What have I heard? Birdie Bam, is that a fully named one Bam? Bam Bird, Damn Bird, whatever. There's a lot of names for the one Bam. I've even heard just Bird. I don't know. I've even heard just Bam. Now that's interesting because it's a one Bam. I don't know. Maybe I'll write to the league. I have written many letters and some other players have written many letters. Maybe I'll put it on my list. I've got a few on there already. All right, so this is a big one, and this is another rule that is being taught incorrectly these days, and that is racking a tile. So what is a rack tile? A rack tile is a tile that is completely sitting on your rack, on the slope part of the rack. If you don't want anybody to doubt it, just take your hand off of it, just slightly, until you're ready to discard it, or if you end up keeping it, you keep it and discard another tile. But here is the way a fully racked tile looks. So the way some people are being taught is that it's okay to tap the tile on the top of the rack and then discard, or touch the tile to the side of the rack and discard, or still holding on to the tile, put it on there, but not quite letting it go. And then you have the fully placed tile, which is the proper way of racking. Now, maybe they were never really told or explained how come this is so important. But obviously, for those of you who know, once a tile is fully racked, the previous discard is no longer up for grabs. You cannot call it. So this tap and discard or partial tap and discard is not going to prevent any of that. And I try and teach, pick and rack, pick and rack. And it's hard once you are taught one way to break habits. I mean, I've done my live streams on breaking, bad habits, and I see it constantly with people that I'm reteaching how to play the proper way. They just can't get used to it. Eventually they do. If I'm there, the devil Debbie is on their shoulder. They eventually get it. So this is very, very important rule. Now this is a really good one because this is another one that's asked quite often, and many people don't know about this. A player can change the number of tiles in a grouping prior to discarding, but not an incorrect tile placed on the top of the rack. And this is not in the book officially yet. There is a letter from the league that was dated in February that states this. So hopefully on the next edition, or maybe the next newsletter in 2025 in January, maybe they'll add it there. And if enough people write in about things, that's what gets them to add it in their bulletin or eventually put it in the book. Since the book was just issued last year, it's, I think, copyright. I've seen it's the copyright 2023, but they call it the 2024 edition. I just call it 2024 edition, and that's fine. But anyway, this is what you can do. You could go from a pung to a kong to a quint, any which way. You can do this before you discard, but you cannot go from putting up 3 5 dots to a 3 dot and changing it to a pung or to a kong with a joker. You can't do that. I'm curious to know, after, if you make a note on this, how many of you actually didn't know this rule. And and just saying a quick hello. Wait a minute. Somebody said they couldn't hear me, but then somebody said we can hear you. Okay, good. A quick hello to everybody watching from YouTube. All right, next rule is calling a tile must be verbalized. This is another one that I've called about into the league about, and again, some of these rules, they're written one way in one part of the book and slightly different in another part of the book. And that's what happened with this particular one, because it's stated on page 15 and then on 33 in the glossary of terms, it's there too. And they added something there that wasn't on page 15. Okay, is it confusing? You bet. It's confusing to me. So you can say call, take, I want that, or anything along that line. And you can also say wait, hold, or pause. Pause is a new one that I've been hearing lately, so I think somebody's teaching that word before verbalizing a call. The risk in waiting too long is if you say wait, hold, or pause, and another player firmly says call, actually the way it's wording, if a player next in turn verbalizes a call, they would be entitled to that tile. So if you're not sure and you say wait or hold, that's great. Don't take a real long time to make your decision. But this is all pretty new in the rule book, so it wasn't there before. Joker exchanges. I don't know if you guys have that in your way, but I do. My little block with everybody on it. I don't think you guys can see it. Joker exchanges after a Mahjong in error or after a hand is declared dead. Somebody actually sent me a email about this to say, are you going to cover that? And I'm like, yep, I am. Joker's incorrect exposures made prior to a Mahjong in error are still available for exchange. Now, in the book, it talks about, or I'm not sure if it's actually in the book or if it was in a bulletin, but somewhere it said to prevent confusion, the exposures that made the hand dead are returned to the player's rack. I personally have a little bit of a problem with that because knowing what's up in exposures and what's been played is pretty important when you're making decisions strategically. So if somebody returns those exposures back into on their rack, how are you going to remember what they were? I wouldn't. So I'm not keen on that. But if you turn the jokers upside down, which I can't remember who was the one who suggested that, which I think is brilliant, actually. Turn those jokers upside down, you'll never be confused because you'll know those are the dead jokers. All right. Now, jokers from an exposed concealed hand, none of them are available for exchange. So if somebody was playing a concealed hand and that hand ended up going dead, and it was an obvious concealed hand with jokers in it, none of them are available. And the same thing applies as in that first bullet. I don't love the idea of returning that entire hand to the player's rack. I want to know what those tiles were. It's really, to me, an integral part of my whole decision, or especially if one of those tiles was one that I needed in, my hand. If they're returned to the player's rack, I don't know whether they're in their rack, someone else's rack. I don't see them on the table. I don't know, but I would like to know. So instead, turn the jokers upside down. I love that. I think it's very clever. Maybe one day they'll change it up. I don't know. All right, what do we have next? So this is a pretty important one. And this is also something that a lot of these rules they've added. I had a huge list of rules that were not found in the rule book, Mahjong Made Easy. And when I redid this presentation from the last one that I had done, I was amazed as to how many of them now made it to the rule book. And I'm very thankful. National Mahjong League, certainly very thankful for all that you've done for this game. And I love the fact that they've added so many of the rules that weren't in there. This is one of the ones that they put in with the hand-to-hand exchange. And the hand-to-hand exchange ensures that you don't accidentally, or because it's been a habit for years, I have seen it done over and over again. Somebody takes their natural tile and they just put it on the table and slide it across. And we're supposed to read everybody's mind while we're playing this game. Well, it's now written in the book. If you do not make an announcement and the tile hits the table, you're out of luck. SOL, you missed that joker. So this is really a great way to prevent that. Just get in the good habit of doing a hand-to-hand exchange. Don't put it down on the table. Even if you remember to announce it, my feeling is that we always have those moments, or not always, but sometimes have those moments, and we just forget. We're like, oh, my friends all know what I'm doing. Well, no, not quite. So just keep this in mind. And, I'm all about people getting into good habits, good form, everybody playing the same way, the right way, by the rules. And I just want to say, if you play by the rules, it doesn't mean that you're not playing a friendly game. I see that going on and posting. That is constantly on my group. No, we play a friendly game. We don't play by the rules. We don't, no, it's no big deal. We play a friendly game. Every game should be a friendly game, but it doesn't mean that you don't play by the rules. Games have rules and they're meant to be followed. Sometimes there may be a table rule that you may do something that doesn't really change the integrity of the game. For instance, turning the jokers upside down instead of returning the tiles to the rack. To me, that's not going to change the integrity of the game, but it's certainly going to help all the players making their decisions, which is important. We don't want to hide anything. So Randy said, this is a good point. My husband said, although he's supposed to wait till the end to ask the questions, but I'll answer it. Why would you change the rules of Mahjong if you don't change the rules of card games? That's true. And, there are different versions of some card games, like Canasta has the American version and some other versions. But that's okay because those versions are going to have their own rules within them. American Mahjong has its rules. There are other forms of Mahjong that have their own rules as well, such as MahjX, if any of you have heard of that, Siamese. So there are different versions. Again, the rules are meant to be followed. All right, a call tile cannot be used for a joker exchange. I get asked this over and over again. No, a call tile or claim, I hear that word quite a bit too, can only be used to complete an exposure or for Mahjong. That's it. Period. The end. That one's pretty simple. Joker exchange resulting in a Mahjong. Now, if a player does a Joker exchange which results in a Mahjong, it is considered a self-pick Mahjong. This is another question that I get asked quite often. And the winner is paid double the value of the hand by all the players. Oh, easy. That's a pretty cut and dry one. I like the easy ones. Simultaneous call for an exposure or for Mahjong. Oh my goodness, this one really just continues to have me in a tizzy. And I do have to admit that there are many players, including myself, that don't follow this one to the T. Oh my God, did I just say that? Please, I did. This one has been quite controversial. And the way it works, in case you still are not 100% sure about it, is, or let's talk about the way it used to work. Two people called the same tile for an exposure. The player next in line to picking would be the one to get it. Players called into the league, they wrote into the league, they were complaining that sometimes people are, not paying attention, and one person calls the tile, and seconds later, another one says, oh, no, I want it, and I'm next in line, so I get it. Well, that's why this rule was created. And it basically says that if two people call the same tile, even if the next person is not in line to pick, and they pick the tile up from the table and put it on their rack quickly, or take tiles out of their hand quickly and put it on their rack, they get that call. So a lot of players feel that this actually induces some aggressive play. I tend to agree with it. If I'm in a group and they play that way, I'm going to follow it. I am, but I just don't love it. I don't love this rule. I have to be honest. Now we all know, I'm hoping, that one player calls and one player calls for exposure and one player calls for Mahjong. Mahjong always trumps. But if two people call the same tile for Mahjong, the same rule applies, except if one player starts to expose. That, to me, again, is just not my favorite rule. I'd like to hear from you guys what you think about this. Some of you might really love it. Some of you might not, but jot down 15 and let me know after. All right. What about misnamed tiles? Another thing that I've been asked, do I have to correct it or can anybody correct it? Anybody that notices can and should correct it. It's for the benefit of everybody. There is no advantage to not renaming an incorrectly discarded tile. And if a player declares Mahjong on a misnamed tile, the declarer gets the win. They get to win that. This is a little, again, I'm on the fence about this particular rule, but the erring player pays the winner 4 times the value of the hand, if that does happen. And this is in the book. All right, let's see what else we got here. A player's pick is interrupted by a call. This is probably, if I had to ask 100 people, I bet 50 people will answer this one incorrectly. So maybe jot it down and tell me what you would do if a player picks a tile from the wall and someone else calls a discard at the same time. Who gets that tile? Well, if a player's pick is interrupted by a call, that tile is put back in its original spot in the wall, and the caller gets it. Yep. And guess what? This one is still not in the book. It's in the 2021 bulletin, and it's also was recently, well, not too recently, but 12/20/23, there was a call to the league. A lot of these things still aren't in the book, but many, not as many as it used to be. It's so much better. You know what's amazing to me is the game started, it was standardized in 1937, and we still have new quirky things that come up all these years later. And I wonder if some things came up years ago when I was a little girl and my mom was playing, but back then maybe they didn't, I don't know. I know they called the league. They had to because the bulletin has been out for as long as I can remember. And those bulletins did add new rules based on questions. But it just like, how do we keep coming up with more things? It just blows my mind. All right, this is a big one. Placement of a called tile. A tile called should be placed on the top of your rack. Oh, just disregard that little extra period there. This one is not yet in the book, but it was in the 2024 bulletin, and it was in a box with a highlighted background. So it is new, but guess what? There's no penalty for this. So you're supposed to do that, but what if you don't and you put it in your rack? There's no penalty unless you're playing in a tournament. If you're playing in a tournament, yep, you're going to be called dead because most tournaments have that rule. Now, I still play with friends that put it in their rack. They're just not used to putting it on top, but that is the way it should be done. All right, next one up. All right, dead hand declaration. There are several different ways a hand can go dead, and we're going to look at those in a minute. But a player should not call their own hand dead. And I'm going to tell you that this here is another one that made it to the rule book, the new rule book, in more than one place. And I'm really glad it did. But this is probably one of those rules that most people don't know about and don't do. There are some that I know follow this rule and know it, but honestly, most people don't. So you should never call your own hand dead, and it's not officially dead until another player declares the hand dead. Now, is it strategy to not call a player's hand dead? Or is it strategy to call a player's hand dead? I mean, I could think of ways that it could benefit either way. Okay. So you have to make that decision. And if you don't want to declare someone's hand dead, maybe there's a joker in there and you still want a chance at getting the joker exchange. So you don't do it until after you do the joker exchange. I mean, that could be. If you call somebody's hand dead, obviously you're going to get more picks from the wall. But you're also never going to have an opportunity to see what's potentially in that other player's hand if they should call and expose tiles. So their hand remains, those tiles, unknown for the rest of the game. So whether it's strategy or not is going to be something you'll have to decide, and you know, based on whether you feel it's good or not, you do it. You call them dead or you don't call them dead. It's your choice. But a player should not call their own hand dead again, and it's not officially dead. So if you say I'm dead and nobody else speaks up, play on. Kind of funny. All right, so now we're going to go through reasons to call a player's hand dead, and this is excluding Mahjong and error because I've got that separate. And there are lots of ways, and it's probably a good idea to get familiar with the reasons why somebody's hand could be dead. Exposing a hand that's not on the card. Exposures and what has been discarded reveal a player's hand cannot be made. Exposing tiles from a concealed hand. You may not know this with the first exposure, but you may be quite obvious with the second one. A player has too few or too many tiles. How many of you, I'm curious, pay attention to that during the game? Periodically check to make sure everybody's got the right number of tiles. I do it quite often, but I have to admit I forget sometimes. Okay. And if anybody has, I see some hands being raised about that, keeping an eye on it, I'm assuming. But if you have any further questions, again, jot it down. We'll come back to it. Player picks out of turn is another reason. And we've got some more here. This is some of these are got to really kind of wrap your head around these, but they can be confusing. Trust me. I've had to bounce these things off of with my husband and other friends that are passionate about the rules. So player picks from the wrong end of the wall and racks the tile. The tile stays with the dead hand and the play continues from the correct end of the wall. Now, interestingly enough, the rule doesn't clearly say what happens if a player picks from the wrong end of the wall and the tile is in the air. I know that there's been a few letters, there's been calls, but I don't have anything that I have seen that's consistent with that. So I don't put it in here as a source. Maybe somebody else has it. If you do, please feel free to share anything you have in writing that I don't. Now, if more than one player picks from the wrong end, the game stops. If a player picks from the wrong end and discards a winning tile, the game stops, and the erring player pays for the table. So there are the situations around picking from the wrong end, because we've got wrong end, wrong wall. Oh my God, we've got crazy different ones here. This one is picking out of turn. If the tile is racked, the tile stays with the dead hand. If discarded, the tile remains on the table. That's often a question that's asked. Well, what happens to that tile? If the tile is needed for Mahjong, the game stops and the discarder pays 4 times the value of the winner's hand. You know, sometimes in the book you read 4 times the value, pays for the table, and it all ends up to be the same, but they've got it worded differently in different places, and I just want consistency. That's my hope one day. Okay, we got a couple more here. Player pushes out the wrong wall, and a tile has been picked and racked. The tile remains with the dead hand. The game proceeds with the correct wall. I mean, you know, just try to recite these without looking for the rule. Now, if a player pushes out the wrong wall, causing another player to pick from that wall, both the player who pushed out the wrong wall and the player who picked have dead hands. Okay. And the tile remains with the dead hand or hands. So tile remains with the dead hands. Unbelievable. Okay, another reason for calling someone's hand is doing an invalid joker exchange. And all of these are in the book on pages 19, 20, and 21. And they're also all in Mahjpedia for you to find a little bit easier than in the book. Now we're going to go over Mahjong and Era. This is another one that, again, sometimes you just have to like really think it through. Hopefully these scenarios that I'm giving won't be too challenging. But here, before I put that one up, so a lot of Mahjong and errors include a player tossing in their hand prior to verifying if someone has a good Mahjong. So just don't get so anxious to throw your hand in. How many of you guys have done that? Number 23, I bet some of you have, right? And then all of a sudden somebody's like, oh no, it's an incorrect Mahjong. And now your hand is belly up, right? All right, so here are the common things that occur with Mahjong in error. Player A declares Mahjong in error, but does not expose tiles, and other players have not destroyed their hand. The game continues. This is the easiest one. Yep, easiest one of them all. Player A declares Mahjong in error on a discarded tile or a pick. If only one exposure is made, the player can change their mind and call for an exposure only, or if a pick from the wall can continue if only one exposure has been made. No penalty. And this is in Mahjong Made Easy on page 21. Also, there is a letter in writing from the league, and there was a call to the league recently again to confirm this. This was one of the ones that was just so confusing in the book. And, you know, we have to call and figure it out and make sure we understand exactly what it means. But one exposure, you could change your mind and use that called tile for an exposure, or you pick from the wall, you say Mahjong, only one exposure goes up. According to the league, one exposure is okay. And I know there are probably still players out there who are going to disagree with this, but that's the information I have. Again, you have anything else that states anything differently in writing with a more recent date than what I have, please share. Okay, we got more. Player A declares Mahjong in error, and at the same time, player B exposes part of their hand. Oh my God. And then later on, player C's hand goes dead for whatever reason. Doesn't really matter. Penalty, player C pays the last surviving player D double the value that player D was attempting to make. Tell me that's not a lot to wrap your brain around. I mean, sometimes you really have to like think it through. You have to read it over and read it over, and finally it's like, okay, I get it. Not easy to get this stuff, but there it is. That's the way it goes. Player A declares Mahjong in error, and at the same time, both B and C toss their hands in. Oh, they were so anxious to get on with the next game. So the penalty is player A, who declared Mahjong in error, pays the surviving player D double the value of the hand that player A was attempting to make. That's another, those are crazy words too. player A was attempting to make. I mean, okay, you got to trust the person, I guess, to make sure that you understood what hand they were playing. I think it'd probably be pretty obvious, but all right, let's see. Player A declares Mahjong in error, and player D destroys the wall before confirming the validity of player A's hand. So D destroys the wall this time. What's the penalty for that? Player D pays player A, B, and C the lowest value shown on the card. Okay, why can't they just make the same penalty across the board for everybody, for every one of the situations? Just come up with something consistent. I think it would be a lot easier, but it's different. Everyone is a little different. Okay, so we're going to, right before we go, I'm going to share Mahjpedia right now. And I know that somebody is just coming in the room, and we're done with this, but we're going to get to Q&A. But I'm going to go ahead and I am going to go here. And I just want to talk about this real quick before I share my phone screen on here, which I did try a few times. So hopefully it'll happen successfully with no problem at all. But this again is an app for iPhone or Android. And these are common words that I put together. And there may be more that you may be able to think of that are pretty common, but these are the ones that I seem to use the most. So this is why I have this list of terms. And I'd be more than happy to email you my list if you did need it and you did want to purchase the app, which is, by the way, $4.99 for the year, just a little over a cup of Starbucks coffee. But if you notice down here, if you use search terms that are not used in American Mahjong, and these are things that I'm hearing quite a bit today, which is if somebody lays down their tiles. Now, lays down comes from card games, and that may be something more used when you meld in a card game. But draws is another one. We don't draw tiles. We pick tiles. We don't meld tiles. We have groupings of tiles. But you use terms that are not common terms, you're going to get a no hit. Okay, so the very beginning of the app is right here. And you'll notice it says at the very top of the search area, the blue box, it says when searching, remember a few words are better than many. And then down below, you've got some major categories where you can go in and read rules that are just about these major categories, or like peruse all the rules, things about the Charleston, guidelines of the game, and even strategy you can go ahead and do. But if you want to look up, what did we talk about? Let's see. How about we just type in the word exposure and we hit search. Then the next page is going to bring up all of the articles that have exposure in it. So we looked up, we were talking about changing or amending an erroneous exposure. So I click on that one, that top one, and there you have the rules laid out and where they are and the source after each one of them about the rules with changing and exposure. Now, if you want to look something else out, you don't have to go back because the search bar is everywhere. So let's say we put in East because you want to learn about East, right? Here's all of the different articles with East. ID 56, wrong player begins the game as East. And there you have the rule. So every rule is in here. And by using simple search words, you're going to find the rule a lot easier than putting in a whole lot. If you put in 2 or 3 words, it's probably going to find something, again, as long as they're common words. But you can also share this with a friend. So at the top, if you click the share up at the top here, you click share, it's going to open up, and you could share it through AirDrop, messages, email. You could even save it in your notes. You could share it through Messenger, Facebook, Gmail, Outlook, any which way you can actually send that to someone. If you had a discussion with someone and you were like, I'm going to check it out, I'll find out the rule. And it's, it's that easy to do that. I also have a link directly to our website, which takes you right to our website. You can also connect at the bottom to our Facebook group, Instagram page, email us about a question. And I welcome people to say, hey, email me. I couldn't find this rule. Help me. Or you're missing this rule. Where is it? Whatever the case may be, it's, pretty easy to find what you're looking for. All right, I'm going to go back here. I hope you can see this again. I am now back on the slideshow here. And I do want to say that if you're not a subscriber of my YouTube channel, there's a lot of educational material there. All of my live streams are there in playlists and very easy to find. So all of the special live streams I've done are in there. Of course, if you don't want to look at an old one of these rule live streams, because as soon as a new book comes out, things get updated, so you got to be careful about that. But I have my skill building Wednesday nights and now Siamese Sundays. If you haven't come and joined me for either of those, please do come and join me for either of those live streams. We have a lot of fun. We have a blast. All right. And I am going to just say thank you on share, and then we could talk about some of these rules, and I will go back to them if we need to. But in the meantime, I'm going to stop sharing and go ahead, and you can raise your hand if you made a note, any comments, any questions you have. And Susan, you're first up. You may unmute.
Hi.
And ask away.
I just wanted to clarify something. I'm assuming everybody here knows the rules, but just in case they didn't, in rule number 7, in number 17, when a player's pick is interrupted by a call, the tile goes back in the wall. You said the caller gets the tile, and the caller gets the discarded tile. They don't get the tile.
Right. The caller gets the discard. So it's a pick from the wall and a call. The caller gets preference. That is correct. Yes.
To clarify that they get the tile that was discarded.
Yes. Maybe I should clear that up or make it a little bit clearer. But yes, you are absolutely correct. Player A picks a tile from the wall. Player B, even if it's simultaneous, it doesn't matter. It hits the rack. It's a pick in a rack, and someone else says call, the caller gets it. A lot of people don't think that's a fair rule. And, I honestly don't think it's so fair, but they had to come up with something for simultaneous actions, because they do sometimes happen that quickly at the same time. So yes, good point there.
That's it. Your family is lovely. I love the picture of your family on your screen.
Oh, thank you. That they're so young there too. One of them's a teenager. But thank you so much. Okay, and next up is Nancy. Thank you so much, Susan.
It's pretty funny because Susan and I play together, so we are rule followers in our group. So anyway, here's my question. It's never happened, but you brought up the question about if the player that is the wrong east picks a tile up. You said that play then continues for that round with, is it just with as though you had 3 players and that person that picked started incorrectly is east, sits out that entire round until either someone gets Mahjong or it's a
No,
wrong game?
no,
That's
they continue to play, but then you go back to the correct East, and their penalty is they miss being East the next time around.
Oh, I thought when you said for the round, I thought it meant for the game. That's why I wanted to clarify it with you.
Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear, but yes, they
You're
don't
not clear.
yeah, they don't sit out, but they get a little slap on the hands.
Gotcha. So they just, for that, what I would call like that one cycle around, not the entire game. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And I thought it did say, let me just see if I can get this back really.
I thought it said a space round.
Oh, maybe.
Wasn't sure if that a space round meant.
What number?
It was numbers 4.
I thought I fixed this to make it clearer because my husband always does my proofing.
Well, Susan and I go back and forth on all these things, so you have to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I have friends like that too, which is so nice to have somebody who's passionate about the rules like you are, right? Okay, the game continues.
There was a second part of that. See,
I'm going there. Yep.
Okay.
The player who assumed East incorrectly is skipped during that round. So it's
I wasn't sure if round meant game or just 4 turns.
Yeah, it's actually it's 4 games to a round, basically, is what we think in terms of
4 games to a round. So when you say the player who assumed East incorrectly is skipped during that round, so you continue. So I'm even more. Are you saying then you're playing with just 3 people?
No. You continue the game, and then at the start of the second game, the correct East begins. But let's say the wrong player was the player to the right of East, had been the one who assumed East position before. They don't get to be East during that next game when they should be East next.
So the penalty does not occur during the game where
itself, right?
And the penalty occurs the next game. Okay, that makes it clear to me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, who else has their hand up? Susan, I think you're next. Oh, Beth is next. Sorry. Beth Fisher. You can unmute.
There we go. Well, all I wanted to say was, of course, I'm the one that sent the question in where I tried to use Mahjpedia and I was typing in too much.
Oh, you are welcome here.
Yeah, so
isn't that coincidental that you're here tonight?
Well, it is. But what I ended up doing after visiting with you was I typed in single, and that's what brought up my answer that I was looking for.
Oh, good.
And
good.
To tell people, we had someone say, well, you can never call a wind. And I said, except for Mahjong.
Right.
And that's when we got, oh, no. Well, the best thing about Mahjpedia is you can prove yourself right. But it's a wonderful tool, but there is a trick to using it correctly.
Exactly. And I'm in the process of actually making a how to use video so that it can be out there for everybody to use. There is one in the app, but it's not working properly. And there were some things that have been changed. So I'm working on that. But once you understand how sometimes people overthink things, right? But think about it. If you say you can't call a wind except for Mahjong, somebody could be thinking, you know what you're saying, but somebody else could be thinking, well, wait a minute, what if the wind that I'm calling is a pung or a kong, or it's not a single. You really wanted to know about single groupings.
Yes.
And the fact that you could only call for a single. And this is where it becomes important to understand the terms, which are, on the card, they're in the book, and to know the groupings, what we call things, is so important in this game. That's why I'm saying, if somebody says, can I meld? Mahjpedia doesn't have meld. It's
No,
not,
we're not playing canasta.
No, but if you said grouping, it's going to be there. And I try to, as long as something makes sense, and it's not a word that is incorrect to Mahjong, I try to put more than one thing in a title so it'll pick up as much as possible. If anybody ever has a suggestion to make it better, please feel free. Like I said, just email me, send me a message. I am more than happy I'm always looking to improve everything to make it easier for you guys.
Well, it's a wonderful tool, and I would advise anybody to get it.
Well, thank you so much.
Especially when you're right.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. Well, thank goodness for Google and Mahjpedia.
Exactly.
Anyway, Judy.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Good.
Good. I have a question regarding rule number 9,
Okay.
where you're talking about changing the number of tiles before discarding.
Mm-hmm.
In the example that you showed, it was like 3 to 4 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Today I was playing a game under 369 where it was 3-6, same suit, and then 6-9, the pong, pong, kong, kong.
Mm-hmm.
I incorrectly put up 4 6s for the first half of that.
Mm-hmm.
So can you go backwards? Could I have taken, that 6 away and made it a 3 versus a 4?
So you had more than a quint?
No, it should have been a pong, but
Okay.
I made it a pong, but I made it a kong.
Yes, before you discard.
I can. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I can't do it
if you put up the wrong tile.
Got it. Thank you. That clarifies it. It has to be all done at the same time. I can't wait for another round and then, I've got too many and take it back.
Oh, no.
No, it has to be before. No, yeah, somebody's going to call you dead if they want to call you dead. If they don't think it's strategic to not call you dead. Okay, that's another whole live stream.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Okay, let me see if I have any. I don't have any questions on YouTube. I've got, let's see, Randy, you had a question, I think. Did you? Oh, he changed his mind. Okay, Judy, you're up. Nope, I think Judy went already, right? Okay, if Judy went already, then, or did you go, Judy?
Yeah, I was question 9. Maybe it's a different Judy.
Okay, good. No, I don't think so. So Susan, you have another question?
Good. I wanted to piggyback on this question 9. I have put up called a green dragon, put up a green dragon and a joker, and then realized, I've got another green dragon in my hand. So I put the joker back in my hand and I put the green dragon back out, and that's allowed as well. So
correct.
You can mix and match the jokers and the naturals as long as they're all standing the same tile.
Right, exactly. So the grouping, the number of tiles in a grouping could be changed. Just the difference here is if there is a wrong tile up. Once you make that boo-boo, you've got an erroneous exposure, and you can just fake it until you have somebody call you dead if you want, because you're not supposed to call your hand dead. All righty.
And then the other fine tuning of this is if you go to do a joker exchange, you've ended your exposure. You can't go back after your joker exchange and mess around with that exposure.
Oh, okay. So, and that was one I was actually thinking about putting in. So you're saying you did a joker you picked a tile from the wall, or did you call?
No, no,
You-
I called a tile, I made the exposure, and as soon as I either discard a tile or move on to do a joker exchange, I've closed the window on adjusting my exposure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just wanted to add that because that's, it's still within your turn to do the joker exchange, but you've moved on from your exposure as soon as you either discard or do a joker exchange.
right. And actually, the joker exchange at that point is considered a totally separate action,
Right.
unless it's Mahjong.
Oh, yeah. But then even if it's Mahjong, you can't go back and adjust
No,
the,
no, no, you cannot. You just can't use a joker exchange to add to an exposure.
right.
So
I
that you can't do. But if you did a joker exchange and then that joker exchange gives you Mahjong, that goes with the rest of your tiles in your hand, that is permissible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Got it? All right. Now, I think, Randy, did you raise your hand again, or did you change your mind again?
I changed my mind again because the two of you sorted it out before I could answer.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Who's next? Joyce?
Oh, I had to unmute myself. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I joined very late, but I just have a question on this. So if I call a tile and then realize I don't have enough, can I actually put that tile back and pick from the wall?
No, so you have put up a tile. You called the tile, you put it up, and let's say you had a pung up and you were like, oh my God, it was supposed to be a Kong.
Right.
Once
Okay.
once you've made the exposure, once you've either placed the call tile on top of your rack or take tiles out of your rack, it's a done deal. You have to hope that you can make it work somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I definitely can't put that tile back, but I can still make
You could make the
a
hand
3 or
work
4 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. You could switch to another hand. Probably something you could do. You might be far away from a hand, but if you could resurrect it, that's great.
Deb,
And
can I just interject? It's Nancy again. If she's called a discard and just has it in her hand and has not yet put it on her rack, or has not put any tiles, from her slant to the flat part of her rack, what is the status of that discard? Can it go back down and she pick from the
yes,
wall?
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to
Yeah,
double.
and it is in the rule that we went over. The way you're committed to a called tile up until the time. I mean, you're not committed until it hits the top of your rack or you
Right.
take tiles out.
Thank you.
It's different than a pick from the wall. So, and just real quickly, Bill watching from YouTube asked a great question, and this is something, Bill, that just came up. Anytime you have something developed, and I can't even imagine, coding is like way over my head, but there's been so many changes and things that had to be fixed, and I mean, on and on and on for a year now. And Bill is saying that he has a notice that says Mahjpedia is expiring in 2 days. Well, it's supposed to be an automatic renewal, but from what we found out, because my husband had the same thing happen on his end, it doesn't look like it is auto renewing, Bill. So I think you're going to have to go in and renew it yourself. You could let me know, please email me. You know where to reach me for sure. And I have already sent a message to the developer about this because it was set up where you can cancel it if you want. You can, not renew it, but it does auto renewal. It does auto renew if you don't, I guess, let us know or email or something like that. It does auto renew. But again, for $4.99, I mean, I'm just saying, I can't imagine unless you are not using it correctly, and I'm here to help you use it correctly, how it's not a valuable tool. And I'm not just saying it because it's my own. You leaving? Okay. Because it's our own development, but I'm saying it because it seriously is that easy and that valuable a tool to use. And for $4.99, certainly I'm not going to be retiring anytime soon. And I didn't put it out there for it to be a moneymaker. I wanted to put this out there to make things easier for you guys to learn the rules. All right, let's see if there's more questions here. Judy, your hand is up, and I didn't know if you had another question.
Is it $4.99 per device, Debbie?
I believe you could have it on 2 devices. But I don't remember off the top of my head. So try it out. What I know that you can't do is, and I think they did this to prevent, maybe not, maybe it's only on your phone, because otherwise what could happen is somebody else could potentially log in with your app on another device. So I'm pretty sure it's one on your phone. And that's what you'd have with you at a game. How many people actually, I mean, some people probably bring their tablet if they read a lot on it, but it's a lot easier to manipulate on your phone.
It's true. Currently, I have it on my tablet, but that was the reason for the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Try to log in on your phone and see what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. I'm always learning, like I said, with this stuff. So I'm willing to look into it as well if I need to. Who else here? Debbie.
My question, Debbie, is maybe more an etiquette question, but I play in a group of women that have been playing 1 to 2 years, and then we have 3 that have been playing 50 plus years. And I notice with those 3, they always do this when there's the last 2 tiles in a wall and they pick the top one, they will take the bottom one and put it in front of the next player. And I know they're not supposed to do that because that's in essence picking out of turn, but is there a rule that I could point them to show them that that's in essence cheating because it's speeding up the amount of time, you know, for the person to pick and lessen the time for somebody to call a discard?
Well, it's written in a few places in the book that you're not supposed to touch someone else's tiles. And that's one thing. But like you said, if you move a tile from the wall, it's yours. And so technically you have to take that tile. So that's also in the rule book. So both of these things kind of solidify the fact that you are not supposed to be moving that tile, to in front of another player. But I also see a lot of times people take, let's say there was a large break, and after the picking in of the tiles, there's only a few tiles left. Now, the game hasn't technically started, so I don't really think this would fall under the same situation. But to make it easier so that nobody mixes the Charleston passes with those few tiles sitting there by themselves, they're moved to the next wall that's going to be pushed out. I think those are 2 separate things. Because you're basically talking about the game is in play and somebody else picks the last, the one of 2 tiles left in the wall. There's 1 tile left, and that other player has gotten into what I would consider a pretty bad habit by taking that tile and now moving it to the player. So they're wrong. I mean, they're technically, they could be dead if you want to, but I mean, are you going to do that, or are you going to keep your friendship going, you know?
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's
the thing.
yeah, it is. It's a fine line sometimes because, you know, do we follow the rules? And is there a way to say to get that point across to the player? You know, maybe she doesn't know it's a rule. You know, it's in the rule book. Two different you're violating two rules. One is you're not supposed to touch anybody else's tiles. Two is when you touch that tile from the wall, you're basically picking out of turn.
Right. And one
You-
night I was going to call a discard, and one of these ladies had moved her tile right over in front of her rack, and so all she did was lift it up and discard it because it wasn't the tile she was waiting on. And I said, well, I didn't have time to pick my, to say I needed that discard.
Mhm, mhm.
And I overrode her and said, I'm getting my discard.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a tough one. There's a lot of etiquette, sportsmanship and etiquette in the game. And I do a whole live stream on that, you know, about once a year as well, which I love. I love that whole topic. You know, the reason we should pick from the wall and then rack it and pause a few beats in between is to allow the previous player to decide whether they want that call. I mean, some of us just don't think that quickly. You know, I mean, you need a few seconds to be able to even say, hold up or wait. And sometimes I see players really rushing the pick from the wall to the rack, or like you said, just picking and discarding. Some of the longtime players do that pick and discard. That does not give somebody enough time. I mean, look, if everybody is fast paced in that game, then it's fine because everybody's on the same page. But it's a courtesy to understand who you're playing with. Does somebody need a little bit of extra time, you know, and is that just too fast for them, you know, or is it up to you now to say, you know what, I'm not really having fun playing with these ladies. They're just
We have
not
fun, but sometimes we have too much because another problem is sometimes it's kind of loud because like Tuesday night, we had 12 women sitting here in my den playing. And so there's, the games are moving at different paces. Some of them are shuffling tiles to set up another game. So they're talking. We got music playing in the background and somebody calls a discard.
A lot
and you
going
have
on.
to see it because you can't hear what they call. You have to be able to look at it. And then, so it slows things down a little bit, but.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, so good questions though. Any more questions? And I see a few people said goodbye and good night and all right. So no more questions. I don't see any more hands. I don't see any more questions from there. And I know Ann said she counts the tiles all the time when we were talking about, do you keep an eye on what other people, how many tiles they have on their rack? Yeah, it's a good idea. You know, you never know when you're going to find somebody short or has too many tiles. It happens more than we know. So, Sandy, yes, Sandy raised her hand. You have to unmute. I think you are. Sandy, you're up. Maybe Sandy's audio is not working. All right, while you're working that out, Nancy, you raised your hand.
Only because Susan and I have been texting about this. The last question when someone was talking about that last tile from a wall, sometimes I will confess, we will take a single tile and put it on top of a tile for the next wall. So it's like 3 stacked instead of 2. So you're saying that's not kosher either. We just didn't want that single tile getting lost.
Yeah, but again, that might be a fine line because that one, what you're doing is you want to make sure that nobody misses it. And actually the proper place for it to go, if you're going to put it, would really be at the end of the wall and not stacked on top. Technically speaking, but for me, that is more about, this is a rogue tile here. We don't want it to get missed or not seen. But this other situation, the woman actually took the tile and moved it to the player who it belonged to. So it wasn't, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't about
Okay.
putting a tile where it's going to be picked next. I think that's, it's a fine line.
So you're not going to slap our hands if you see Susan and myself putting that third, that single tile, that lone tile.
No, not at all. We all do it, but I really think there's a big distinction between taking a tile that somebody else is going to be picking next and putting it in front of them.
I agree. Thank you.
That is clearly a different situation. All right. So let's see. Sandy. No, Sandy. You're good. Dory?
Yes, hi. Yes, last week we were playing and one of the ladies got Mahjong with a quint hand. And she had, I believe it was the one with the 5 flowers, the 4 dragons, and the numbers. And one of them, of course, had a joker.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have a pure hand, we pay double.
Mm-hmm.
So she told us it was considered a pure hand.
It can't be.
Wait a minute.
Yes,
What?
I know. That's what, but we didn't want to argue with her. But
No.
she
It's a
claimed
quint hand, you have to have jokers.
Exactly.
Right.
All the quint hands have to have a joker.
so then they're not considered pure at all.
The
That's
only
why
time you could have a pure joker, a pure hand in a quint is
Yeah.
if the only grouping are flowers and all, because you have 8 flowers. That would be the only time, but you can't have, you know what I'm saying? It's not
Yeah.
going to work because there would still be two quint groupings.
Right. Okay.
So
So
there's
she was
I mean, unless they had some other hand where it was, 5, let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 5 flowers and 3 pungs could be pure, right?
oh,
Right? 5 and 3 pungs. So
I don't know.
5 and 3 is 8 and 3, 11 and 3 is 14. If that were a quint hand, if it
Yeah.
were, that could be made pure, right? Because there are enough jokers enough flowers to make a pure quint.
All I know is she had a joker in there and I questioned
No,
it.
not if there's
Okay.
a joker, period, the
Okay.
end. No.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to confirm that rather than arguing, we let it go because she said now it's house rules because it was her house.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I know what goes on out there. Trust me. I really do know what goes on out there. And it is like, some of this stuff is crazy, crazy, crazy. So Sandy, you're having a hard time finding the audio. So it's a little microphone with a line through it that you have to click on. And I don't know what device you're on to kind of help you with that. And so you said your question is that everyone I play with has East dealing out the hand. I know that's against the rules, but seems to be very common among those who taught me to play. Okay, so yeah, and that's a good a good question too. Like I said, I couldn't put every single rule or this would be a very long evening. And I know that sometimes rules are pretty dry as it is. But you're supposed to be picking your own tiles in, and that assures you that you're getting the right number of tiles. You should not be putting anybody responsible for that. And just to add on to this rule is another thing that I kind of, I'm not fond of it, but there are a lot of people that as they're picking, they lay their tiles out flat in front of their rack on their card, and then they flip the tiles up. And I guess they like the trick. Look, you're not going to go to jail over doing it this way. but it is a rule. It's in the book that you leave the tiles in groups of 4 on top of your card. You know, if you don't believe me, open up the rule book and take a look at the picture. You'll see. And the reason you do that is to assure that you haven't shorted yourself any tiles. I don't know about you guys, but I have forgotten to take my 13th tile at times. And if you notice it before the game begins and you're to the left of East before East discards, you can take it. But if you forget, you can't change that during the game. So, you know, if you do that pretty little stacking thing and you're not going to be able to clearly see 3 stacks of 4 and 1. So I'm just saying, I don't know, any of you want to admit to doing that pretty little trick? I don't see any hands on that one, but so we'll just say nobody does that. Debbie, yes.
But I don't flatten them out and flip them up until after they're all distributed.
Okay. That's better.
And Debbie,
yeah.
I was gonna say, I put my stacks of 4 on the flat part of my rack so we can all see them. So you're saying that's not acceptable? It has to go in front? Because that way everyone can see where we are. We tend to schmooze as we're going around. So if it gets long-winded, we can see whose turn it is.
Yeah, it doesn't, the rule says to put them in front of you, but and I also, I've seen people do that. My husband was doing it and I kind of got on his case about it. I feel like it's a little more challenging to sit those 4 tiles on top of that flat part because you only have exactly the right amount of space. So you kind of have to, maneuver them a little bit to sit them there, I think. I don't think it's easier to do. I think it's a little harder. And then you have to take them off of the flat part and put them in your hand. So I think I don't know. To me, it's easier down. And for me, I like the excitement of looking at one tile at a time. I don't want to flip mine all up at one time.
No, I don't flip. I just do the stacks on the top.
I understood. I understood what you were saying. I was just making an extra comment how I like to pick one at a time and like, oh, am I going to get a joker? Am I going to, I don't know. It's just the way I've done it since 26 years old. So, all right, Dory.
Hi, just one more quick question. You mentioned something about if someone touches your tile, or let's say I end up touching someone else's tile, what happens? What's the ruling? Am I dead?
Well, give me an example.
Okay. I was playing with a woman, and as a courtesy, we try to put a little space in between the sets of tiles, and she was relatively new, and so she mushed all her tiles together, and I couldn't quite, I was next to her, I couldn't quite see what they were, so I pushed her 2 tile to the 2 sets for a little space. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a great question. Again, it's in the book. Don't touch anybody else's tiles. There's no penalty attached, so you're not going to be called dead or anything. But the proper thing to do would be to say to her, it is in the rule book to have spaces in between your exposures. Would you mind spacing them a little bit?
Okay. So it is in the rule book. It's in the rule book. Okay.
Yeah. Don't touch anybody else's tiles. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, good question from Nancy. Nancy says, but Dory, what if Dory had spaced them incorrectly? And that's why we don't touch anybody else's tiles. What if you spaced them and actually kept the joker? See, I teach to nest your jokers or hug them within the melds if you can do it. If you don't have a pung with 2 jokers, which you can't nest very easily. But what if they were all squished together and there was a joker and you didn't know which grouping the joker went with?
Right.
And you spaced
but what happens?
Yeah, that's
what would happen?
Well, unfortunately, your friend, the player, who you were helping would be the one to suffer from it, not you. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
And the same thing applies to a joker exchange where you do a joker exchange and you give the person the wrong tile. You're not penalized. It's the person who's getting that joker needs to make sure she's getting the right tile.
Okay.
So many different little nuances, right? Ridiculous. So many, but yeah.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I think that's it. No more questions. I don't see any more in Zoom. I don't see any more on YouTube. I do say that most of my YouTube viewers are like high level advanced players. So I'm pretty confident that they are not asking a lot of questions because they probably know most of the rules. So, but there are a few on there who joined us tonight. But thank you everybody for coming tonight and hanging out. And I hope you picked up a few things. Look, if you want a PDF of this presentation, feel free to email me and ask me for it. Also, for anybody who did come in late that's still hanging out here, it'll be available to watch from the beginning. And it'll be up on my YouTube channel, which is MahjCon, MahjCon. Please, if you aren't a subscriber, please subscribe. Click the bell so you get notifications. Give a thumbs up if you watch something and you like it. I appreciate the support more than you can ever know. All right. Good night, all. And again, thank you so much, everybody. I'm sure I'll see you guys soon. And be well. Night, night.
Thank you. Good night.
You're welcome. Good night.